Hello everyone. I am going to present the topics on 9 and 10 for CMSC202 requirement for assignment number 4. So in topic 9, we will be talking about regular expressions in JavaScript. So first, let's try to understand what JavaScript's regular expressions are. So regular expression is a sequence of characters that forms a search pattern. So when you search for data in a text, you can actually use this search pattern to describe what you are searching for. So a regular expression can be a single character or a more complicated pattern. So regular expressions can be used to perform all types of text search and text replace operations. So it's important to take note that there are actually two types of operations by which regular expressions can be used to perform. So that's text search and text replace. So the syntax for regular expression would be as shown above, so /pattern/modifiers, and then ended with a semicolon. So an example would be a variable PATT is equivalent to /w3 schools/I, and then ending with a semicolon. So here we can see that the /w3 schools/I is actually a regular expression. The W3 schools is a pattern that is actually to be used in a search, and I is a modifier. So here I means that it modifies a search to be case insensitive, so that it doesn't matter whether it's in capital letters or small letters. So using string methods in JavaScript, regular expressions are often used with two string methods. So search, open and close parentheses, and replace, open and close parentheses. So the search, open and close parentheses method uses an expression to search for a match and returns the position of that match, while replace, open and close parentheses method returns a modified string where the pattern is actually replaced. So here, let's go with an example for regular expression search so that we can better understand this. So there are 5 lines in the code, and the first line, we see that my function, open and close parentheses. So this means that my function is defined with codes to be executed inside the curly braces. And in line 2, we see that a variable string is given the value visit W3 schools exclamation point. On line 3, we see that a variable n is given the value str.search, so that refers to the first variable, that str.search, and then here we can see that the regular expression is actually indicated /w3 schools/I. So this triggers a search term for the word W3 schools. And the modifier I modifies the search to be case insensitive. So on line 4 of the code, so document.getElement by ID, demo.innerHTML equals n. So when we run n is called and triggers str.search, open and close parentheses, to actually run. And then W3 school is searched from the variable str, and counting the position of the match, it is seen to be at the 6th. So counting starts from 0. Hence, the output would be 6. In the JavaScript regular expression replace example, the code here, we can see that there are actually 8 lines. And for the code, we can see here that we have inserted something for the HTML to better actually show how it goes about. So PID equals demo. So please visit Microsoft exclamation point, then close P or \P. So here, it means that the HTML code prints, please visit Microsoft exclamation point. And then in line 2, we open a script. And in line 3, basically a function is, or my function is assigned codes to be executed. In line 4, so a variable str is assigned with the value of the inner HTML of the ID demo, which is please visit Microsoft exclamation point. In line 5, you can see that a variable txt is assigned the value .str.replace, so open in close parentheses, slash Microsoft slash I, and then comma, W3 schools. So it means here that the code replaces any text in the variable str that has the string Microsoft. Basically, it's case insensitive with the string W3 schools. On line 6, you can see document.getElement by ID demo.innerHTML equals txt. So here, the txt is invoked and runs the code str.replace. So you've seen earlier that this earlier code is actually assigned that value, and that's why this is invoked. And code finds Microsoft and replaces it with W3 schools. And here you can see now that the output tells us, please visit W3 schools exclamation point. So it basically searched Microsoft and replaced it with W3 schools as the code actually makes it run. So that's basically an example for the search function and the replace function for regular expressions. So there are actually other regular expression modifiers, and the modifiers can be used to perform case-insensitive, more global searches. So for example, as we've discussed I, that performs case-insensitive matching. When we use G, that actually performs a global match. So find all matches rather than stopping after the first match. And then M actually performs multi-line matching. Other items can include brackets, which are used to find a range of characters. So here you can example see a bracket ABC means that find any of the characters between the brackets, so either A, B, or C. Can actually go from small letter A until Z, and then capital A until Z, and other items. Also, a bracket 0 to 9 means find any digits between the brackets. So basically, that's all digits, 0 until 9. And then open and close parenthesis X and then Y. So find any of the alternatives separated by the straight line. So that's basically another way to go about with regular expression patterns. Also, meta characters are characters with special meanings. So for example, /D, so that means find a digit. /S, that means find a white space character. /B means find a match at the beginning or at the end of the word, and /UXXXX means find the Unicode specified by the hexadecimal number XXXX. Quantifiers define quantities, so n plus means matches any string that contains at least one n. N asterisk matches any string that contains 0 or more occurrences of n, and n question mark matches any string that contains 0 or more occurrences of n. And lastly, we go now to the final topic, number 10, which is web programming. And it's a crash course, basically just to go about with some of the significant points on how to use JavaScript in web programming. So some of the basic concepts, basically, would be to go about with part of a URL, or what we call as parts of the URL, or Universal Resource Locator. So here we can see an example of a URL. And basically, there are three parts. The start, which is the HTTP :/. So indicates that this is a URL. It uses the HTTP protocol. Then the next part, so here you can see this one, accs.its.brooklyn.kani.edu. So it actually names the server on which the page can be found. And the last part, the end of the URL, /falsal/text/taote-v3.html names the specific file on the server. So these are basically the parts of a URL. There are also two kinds of web programming. So first, the server-side programming, which is actually programs that transform or generate documents on a server that are popular way to make web pages less static. And it actually affects the document before it is sent to the user. However, when we talk about client-side programming, in some cases, it is also practical to have the program run after the page has been set when the user is already looking at it. Hence, the term client-side programming. So client-side programming is what JavaScript was actually invented for. So another concept here in web programming would be sandboxing. So isolating a programming environment is called sandboxing. So allowing the programs enough room to be useful actually on the client side, and at the same time restricting them enough to prevent them from doing harm is not an easy thing to do, because basically when you do client-side programming, you're actually allowing some of the commands to be manipulated by the end user and or the client. And if there's too much if they're given actually, or if they are actually allowed to do so much, then it would be very problematic also, since there are bugs or errors or scripts that can be injected into your server and can cause problems. So the open method of the window object is one of the examples by which techniques into JavaScript manipulation in web programming has been taken into account for. So it takes a URL as an argument and will open a new window showing that URL. So here's an example of the code that actually invokes the use of window.open. So basically that means it opens a new window when http http://www.pbfcomics.com is actually accessed, and that's attached with the variable Perry. So likewise, an open window can be closed with its method. So because Perry is actually defined as this one, so Perry.close will close that window. So more on the window object, every window object has actually a document property, and this contains an object representing the document shown in that window. So this object contains, for example, a property of location with information about how the URL or about the URL of the document. So this is an example of the show, basically location of the property. And then setting document.location.href to a new URL can be used to make the browser load another document. So when we actually run show, then this one would basically open a new document. So that's the idea behind. And then another point of application of JavaScript in web programming, and it is actually probably one of the most commonly sought after use, would be on forms. So HTTP requests are allowed to contain additional parameters such as queue or query below. So you can see here that there's an HTTP protocol. So there's a URL. Basically, after search, you can see here that's queue. So that triggers a query, and it queries actually Aztec Empire. So the percentage 20 or 20 means space. So JavaScript provides functions encode URI component and decode URI component to add these codes to strings and remove them again. So here's actually an example of that code basically being shown, where we use encode URI component and decode URI component. Likewise, a form is basically a way to make it easy for browser users to create such parameterized URLs. So it contains a number of fields or such input boxes for text, checkboxes for that can be checked or unchecked, and thingies that allow you to choose from a given set of values. So when a submit button is clicked or enter is pressed, then the information that was entered in the fields is added to this action URL as parameters, and the browser will request this URL. So here we get an example of an HTML for a simple form. So you see here that there's actually the form that is defined. So please give us information so that we can send spam. And then the elements name, email, and sex. And then we have here input type. So basically text for the name and email. And then we allow selection. And the options could either be male, female, or other for the sex. And then basically we allow also a submit button. So here, with the value of send. So basically what's in the button is, it says here send. And when we actually send this form, it might produce a URL that looks like this. So here you can see that probably this is the website by which it has been accessed. And the inputs for name would probably have been Ted, email would have been ted@zork.com, and the sex would be male. So this is actually a sample of the actual output by which point of application of forms or in JavaScript in web pages forms can actually be noticed. So this ends the presentation, and thank